to the interesting parts. I skipped all the boring parts as I rebuilt or added on to this rocket the mining part of it, which was going to be awesome because we're going to be able to get space ice and check off one of the requirements for a win here, which is unlimited fuel. And I've spent quite a bit of time looking at what I've been using right now will work just fine. I'm confident I can go ahead and use the fuel loader chip and stuff. All he does, let me point at it, all he does is over here make sure that there's fuel on that pipe. So when we're loading fuel, it will load. And the logic is very simple. It says in the loop, make sure it's pointing in the right direction, make sure that there's pressure on the pipe, turn the pump off when it gets full. I mean, it couldn't be any simpler. And then the rocket logic, everything on the chip that's in the rocket that makes sure no matter what, this thing's not going to get lost in space if I do the wrong thing and lose power or turn that off or I don't know what. This isn't very complex, although it's taken a while to evolve. It says in the loop, make sure that we never turn those key analyzers off. Then see if we are still in space, and if we are, make sure we're in the fly mode. If our altitude isn't 0, then make sure it's in the fly mode. Oh, if the destination's been set, that's what the first part is. And then if we ever are not in space, or rather when we're on our pad, well, then we're in land mode. And so the critical part is if we are not at altitude 0, stay in fly mode. So it jumps down to fly it and sets the setting to 777. And then make sure the pump's pointing in the right direction and make sure that there's always a lot of pressure on that pipe into the engine. Yeah, so if there's less, then turn it on, otherwise turn it off. And it stays in fly loop until our avionics says we're currently at the pad. Then it jumps out, or when altitude is 0. So it does all this, and that part's critical. Then eventually we're going to be landed, like we are right now. If we're at location 4011, then quit loading fuel if the tank ever gets completely full. Otherwise, make sure it's pointing in the right direction. Slowly bring on fuel, watching to make sure that the pipe that feeds the fuel never overpressurizes. And this is too high. So it does that. It does that in the loop. So what we need, though, what I'm concerned about is that when it lands, it's going to be full of ice, and it's going to take a while to process, or at least build out the thing that's going to process it, and we want to unload the fuel. So there's no point in running this code because we know that it needs to evolve further. So I went ahead and worked up what it needs to look like, I think, which is, first let's start with the brain, the chip on the computer. Needs to look something like this, where it's got the same fly loop. We didn't touch that at all. But in the main loop, if we ever detect that we're on the ground, well, then just set the setting to a 111 and quit. And do that until we set a destination, and then it'll get out of that loop. So I feel pretty good about that. Put that on the chip. And then the fueler can be a little bit smarter with, with code that now says, be sure that the rocket's on the ground. That is, the setting is 111. If it isn't, then quit. And I'm going to have more code up here. When it's on the ground, go ahead and control just a second. If we're in landed mode, then go ahead and take control of the pump on the rocket and do the same things we always did, remembering 20K is probably a better setting. It'll be slow, but won't break that pipe. Do the same things we always did on the rocket, and also make sure that the pipe stays loaded, the feed pipe from the ground. I really think so. I really think if we extend these umbilicals, the rocket itself starts taking on power. It's already charged up, so that's nice. And the rocket brain says I'm at 111. I am on the ground. I'm not doing anything myself with the pump. I'm just going to sit here at 111 until it's time to go. And the fueler now can do its thing. Ooh, did you see it? It hit that pipe a little bit. No, stop. Don't break that pipe. Why would you break that pipe? It's taking on the fuel. It's not breaking any pipes. It's just kind of overpressurizing this for a minute. And that's because this pump is set a lot stronger than that pump. Okay. So that will take forever and a day. But we'll come back. So that's one project, and I think it's well in hand. The other project, I went ahead and built out a wheat to flour exchanger that works just as good as the soy to oil exchanger. For every little piece of wheat you put in it, you get back 5 flour, which is exactly what happens in the reagent processor. That part is check, and it was, of course, easy because I did just what I did with the soy thing. Milk, on the other hand, quite a bit more difficult. Let's go ahead and reveal the solution. Or at least what seems to be on the way to the solution. So if we take a little bit more of test soy oil and test ferns, we can see that the baseline functionality, you throw in a bit of oil and it bumps up the balance to, you gave me 5 oils, and you give it some ferns, and we do the math and say, you know what, you're entitled to a milk, just like the chemical processor would do. So then we want to not exhaust our pile of soybean or soy oil. We've got 32 bottles of soy oil all queued up. And we also don't want to lose track of how many ferns, because you might come in with a clump of, get rid of this test stuff. You might come in with a clump of 3 or 4. One time. We gave it 4. Let's keep track that we got 4. And then later, three more. So we've taken in a total of 7. 7. And because it's more than 5, we don't want to take in any more. Is the great idea, the grand plan. See, the sorter turns off. Similarly, on the fern side, or the oil side, and even more important, as we drive up the amount of oil that we take in, we don't want to take it all in, all at once. Maybe we're going to want to make fries. I don't think so, but anyway, that's my plan. That's my thought is, and ultimately it wasn't too terrible, although I know that there's a bug in this right now. So what do? We start at 0. Oh, well, we start at 0. Shoot, where's my timer? I didn't even start it. I need to not get into this. So the bitch of it is, though, is that you'll notice there's no silo here. It's because the game used to allow all kinds of shenanigans. Now you have to keep food in a refrigerator if you don't want it to spoil, and you can't throw it in a silo ever. Milk that goes in a silo comes out rotten. So there's no silo here, and instead I did something as goofy as I've ever done in any video game. My endless supply of milk is an enormous line of buffer freaking chutes. This will store about 130, 40 milks. And whenever I want, I can come down here. Whenever I want. I don't want to do this more than once, but that's not the game we're playing. The game we are playing is whenever I want, I can come down here and refill those chutes with more milk until it's full. And it won't take any more. At which point I don't want random shit to drop in there, so I deconstruct this thing. And it'll work. It'll let me do what I'm trying to do. It's just a little bit hokey. So anyway, the code on this thing is wrong. It says, and I gotta go, you might have heard that beep. It says, display what we've got for the balance of milk, soy, and ferns. Keep track of how many we paid out so we'll know when to fix it, and keep track of what you put in. Then, if there is contents in the soy sorter, go and count it. Branch not equal to 0, have soy. Go and count it. Load, how many are there? Make sure it's soy oil. Kick it off to the right spot. I gotta get back to work. This is a short break, not a long break. Then, if it's the right stuff, we need to count it. We add how much did we get into the balance, and then we check and we say, well, there may not be enough of either one, but let's see. If it's less than 5, no. Otherwise, there is, and turn off the sorter. And then the ferns, same way. If we have enough, then turn off the sorter and set the flag. And then if both of those flags are not true, go on. Otherwise, you got one. So take 5 off of the 2 balances and omit the milk and bump up the count. And I'm not even sure. sure about this part of the code. Anyway, it works fine in test, but when you start queuing stuff up, what I saw was the sorter remains occupied even if you've turned it off, it remains occupied. So the balances just go up and up and up. So it doesn't. So this code needs to be tweaked just a little bit. It's pretty close. Let's just check on the rocket, and I gotta go. I'll bring you back when we see what's what. Is it full yet? Oh, it looks full. 20. 20 is not what we want. That's, of course, fine. Why is it 20 and stopped? Did we dork that code? Did I dork it? The fueler. Probably dorked it. Landed. If the pressure on the pipe, it has to be, is less than 40, then turn the pump on, otherwise turn the pump off. And then there's supposed to be code in there that says if it gets full at any point, if it gets full, completely full at any point, well, then keep the pump off. So that needs to be adjusted too. Anyway, I'm out of time. I hope you enjoyed. Bye-bye.